Auzubillahiminash-shaytanir-rajeem. Bismillahir-rahmanir-rahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very warm welcome to World This Morning. I am your host Hajra Satti and you are joining me on this very chilly and cold and very foggy Monday morning. And obviously Monday gives a lot of dread to a lot of people because it is the start of a new week, it is the start of a new day. But as we say that you find beauty in the places, especially the way you look at it, right? So having said so, I was reading this composition, I was reading this conversation and I was listening to a very interesting discussion that was lined up about the role of language and how language has benefited, contributed to the humanity, or on the other hand, it has not contributed to the humanity. And one of the speakers said that language is something that has not immensely contributed to the human civilization because it has created a lot of conflicts. Lot of conflict stems from the miscommunication because our words are unable to explain or to communicate what we are actually feeling. So the development of the language is exactly a curse to the human civilization, but how much is it true? And when we delve into the subject of language, in the subject of linguistics, especially when we talk about the English, because English is the global lingua franca of this world. It is the language which is talked about or which is mostly heard about, or I mean all of the innovation, all of the research that is coming is in the English language, and especially the social media, because it is one of the very powerful tool, very powerful medium that is contributing towards the global connectivity, and it is in English. But obviously with the passage of time there are lots of other languages in which we can delve into it, like German, like French, like Urdu, like Arabic, Turkish, whatnot, but English is the most dominant language. So today we are going to discuss and deliberate and ruminate upon what sort of job opportunities can English language lead into and its importance in the professional life. So to kickstart this conversation without monopolizing it further, we are very glad that we have been joined by two very wonderful personalities who are gracing us in the studio. First one, we have been joined up by Asif Rasool. He happens to be a lecturer. Assalamu alaikum and thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you very much.
Right. Joining Asif Rasool, we are very glad that we have been joined by Taimur Malik. He also happens to be a lecturer and we are very interested in what sort of cross-pollination of ideas in this language of English are we going to yield. So, assalamu alaikum Taimur and thank you so much for coming.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much.
Right. So, English language learning and its importance, say, in professional life. So, what are your thoughts about it, Asif? Because obviously it is the dominant language in our society. It is one of the ladder through which we get social prestige. I mean, whether we debate it, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, that's another separate subject, but obviously it leads to lots of new opportunities. So, your thoughts on it?
Well, thank you very much, Hajra, for this wonderful introduction, and you mentioned that podcast as well about language. I really appreciate this. Well, talking about language, first of all, it's important. I mean, all languages, as a linguist or as a learner of this various languages, or being a teacher of this as well, I would say like all languages, they are equal, they are wonderful and all that. But why does one particular language, it becomes very important? Why? Because people who speak, they are very important. Right now, when we just look at this international scenario, so we have got this hegemony of like certain superpowers, and obviously when you have got to get the material from internet, most of it's available in English and all that. So there are a lot many opportunities before us as well when it comes to this particular language, because as rightly you mentioned, that's a lingua franca in the world. So first of all, we'll just start off with our own society. For example, we have got different types of schools. So I mean, when they're going to hire people, so they have got like this particular style and all that, which I fully disagree with that they shouldn't go for it, because we should come out of that colonized form of the language, that obviously you need this particular accent and all that. So like schools, there are beautiful opportunities if you're going to properly work on your language. Then when it comes to professional life, it's not only one aspect that is spoken, we have got a written form as well. So in our talking about Pakistan, so when it comes to official language, this is basically English language. So you need to communicate. If you are an expert of it and if you could communicate successfully, so chances are that it catapults you to higher level and all that. So there are host of opportunities before you.
Right. Taimur, so I would like to build upon a very interesting aspect which Asif mentioned, and it is about the colonial aspect, or we talk about moving towards the post-colonial aspect, because obviously we are a post-colonial state, right? And the role of language in that particular construction of post-colonialism, right? So what are your thoughts regarding the role of English and how it plays into this post-coloniality in our subject?
See, the importance of English is something that is unprecedented
That's
in terms
true.
of all the languages in the world.
True.
Before English, if we look into different languages, Greek, Latin,
True.
Persian, Arabic, these were the languages that ruled the helm of affairs
True.
in the field of knowledge, in the field of science, everywhere. Now coming to post-colonial aspect of English language teaching and learning. Now see, the point of view that Mr. Asif has just told us about the importance of English in terms of professional development, I would refer to another aspect, that is to change the frame of learning and teaching of English. Now, what do I mean by that? That we can indigenize the aspects of teaching and learning English, and by doing that, on one hand side, we would be actually refuting the post-colonial aspect of teaching and learning English language.
Right.
See, that aspect, the post-colonial one, or the Eurocentric approach, that has given us nothing except the wastage of time. See, the kids, they start learning English from their childhood till 10th grade or till intermediate. They keep on learning English, but then they come to the academies, to the universities with zero proficiency in spoken or in written version of language.
Oh, yes.
Now, what do we need to do is to change the frame. How to change that frame? To indigenize it. One aspect of changing the frame is going to the Quranic concept of English language. Now, to ward off the evil spirit as well, I would
Sure.
recite some verses from the Holy Quran. This is Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran,
Yes.
Khalaq al-Insan, Allama al-Bayan. Now, these are 4 tiers or 4 steps.
True.
That the most gracious, the most merciful, he is at the top. The second one is the knowledge of the Quran. The third one is the creation of human beings. And number 4th is very important, and that is relevant to our topic today. That is, he taught humans how to express themselves. Allamul Bayan. Now, this meaning of Bayan in native Arabic, there are 3. The first one is, they say that how to speak.
Yes.
Number 1. Number 2 is the ability to speak different languages, and the third one is to describe the things.
Right.
When we come to professional aspect, then professionalism is all about describing
Right.
what is your job requirement.
Right.
Fine. So I would say that changing the frame is essential. So deviating from the post-colonial aspects of language teaching and learning, we need to go into the indigenized mechanisms that can help us in teaching and learning English language.
Right. So, can you also pontificate upon, because you're stressing a lot on indigenizing the methods, right? So, what exactly do you mean by that? Or when you talk about reframing, I mean our construct of English language, what does the reframing exactly mean, especially for the layman out there?
Okay, fine. Let's say we start learning a language, and specifically English language, by parts of speech.
Yes.
And somebody told us centuries ago
Yes.
that there are 8 parts of speech,
Yes.
and we are stuck with them.
That's true.
Those 8 parts of speech, what have they given us?
Yes, that's true.
Fine. To know that there is noun, there is verb, there is adjective, it has nothing to do with language learning. It has nothing to do with the competency of language. And our mother tongue acquisition is a proof to that. Okay? That we do not know the parts of speech, but we are very eloquent in our mother tongue. Our competence is 100% in our mother tongue. Now, again, going back to the Quranic verses, in Surah Baqarah, Allah says that He taught Adam the names of the things.
Yes.
Okay? And when Adam enumerated those names, all the angels bestowed in front of Adam. Now, names, not verbs.
Right, right.
Names, not adjectives.
Yes.
Names, not active and passive. Now, these names means, and why not, taking that point in consideration, why 8 parts of speech? Why not just 1?
Right,
Fine.
right, Right. So, Asif, let's move on to this very interesting conversation, because he talked about, we need to evolve the English language. And I believe that English language has absorbed lots of world. I mean, when the British Empire went into the colonial ventures, they absorbed lots of different words from different languages. For example, in Urdu, we contributed a lot to the English language. For example, Almira and words like this, right? But when we talk about the research, when we talk about the innovation, it is all coming in the English, because obviously it is linked with the power dynamics and the structures that are involved in that, right? But when we also talk about presenting a third world perspective, a global south perspective, or a Pakistani perspective, a counter narrative to English, how do you think it's possible?
Well, as Taimur Malik Saab has rightly said, that we need to change. I would just start, for example, when we talk about learning at school level. I mean, the way they just taught us, perhaps just like one typical grammar translation method, which itself is a kind of hindrance. Perhaps it can support you a lot in reading, it can support you a little bit writing as well. But I have seen like people who only went through that method. But now things have changed a lot. For example, first of all, linguistic came into it. Before this, like, literature was there. So people having this literature background, they were teaching and their perspective were different. But now we know the theories behind it.
Yes.
For example, when a child is going to learn a language, so that's acquisition, a natural mode of learning. But when a second language learner starts learning a language, so we've got like two aspects. For example, in L1, your mother tongue, it has got its own construction. For example, in our case, wo school jata hai, we have got like subject, we have got like object, and we have got verb. But in English, it has got different structure.
True.
So initially, when you start learning a language or when you start speaking in English, basically you are not exactly following English language. Rather, you are going to translate, and this you cannot eliminate this translation from it. But now we are very lucky because we are living in this 21st century. So even children, I can see like my kids, last year I just went with them for hiking, and the way like my son and my daughter, they were talking to each other, I could just recall all those American dramas, British dramas, the way they were just communicating with each other, and they were just saying that, okay, we are going for this thing, especially words and all that. So it has changed, and we need to change it so that people are really going to find it quite easy just to have an excellent grip, and it should take a lot less time. For example, my teacher, he just made me so conscious about pronunciation. I just went to the first language class and he said, oh, come on. I mean, you have got this like very rustic and all. And after that, I watched that one particular movie, My Fair Lady, by Pygmalion Bernard Shaw. And I could associate myself with Eliza Littledew, that poor soul, who was trained by Professor Higgins, who is highly, proficient in this, and who has got like a condescending set of style, that you're a poor girl and you don't know the manners and all that. And ultimately he sets a goal that, well, I'm just going to improve her pronunciation and all that, and she's going to become a florist who is going to get a very good job, and ultimately he gets, and there are a lot of criticism and all that as well.
Right. So Taimur, what is this obsession? I know our third world obsession with the accents and with the pronunciations, especially with the English, because people are very conscious about having a particular sort of accent, right? A very posh accent of English language. And how is that instilling, what do you call it, a sense of security or maybe insecurity into the kids, especially who are in the schools and who are growing up, and especially in the A category schools, because there's a lot of focus on English language, and English language as being your some sort of mother tongue, or in equivalent to the mother tongue, right? And how does, like he mentioned about it, so your media industry is mostly in English, the Hollywood, which is the biggest industry, is in English. How does that impact on the growth of a child?
Fine. First thing first, we need to differentiate between pronunciation and accent.
Right.
Okay? Pronunciation is saying a word in a way that is intelligible to the native ear.
Right.
So whenever we speak a word, for example, democracy, if we have to say it, we need to say democracy so the native ear can get this word. Fine. And then if they say a word, we would be able to understand it completely. This is what we call pronunciation. Now, accent is an overall impact of pronunciations. Adopting a native-like accent is something that is a far dream.
Right.
Unless and until you live in a native society, and particularly and especially in critical age period, that is from birth till 10 years of age. Okay. Other than that, if you want to mimic the native accent all the time, then kava chala hans ki chaal apne bhul gaya.
True.
Fine. So this is something we need to know, pronunciation and accent. The other thing is that why people try to have an accent that is, and they call it, you know, accent reduction. I've read a very interesting thing yesterday about we do not call it as accent reduction, rather it should be accent addition.
Okay.
We add another type of accent to our own domestic accent. I'm, for example, a Henko speaker, and my accent of English would carry the imprints of Henko throughout my life.
True, that's
fine. If I just try to kill those imprints, then that is very, very difficult. Now, when we teach children how to pronounce the words of English correctly, this is legitimate. We should do that. But if we try to instill a kind of accent in them that is American or British or Australian or Scottish, a very heavy one, then it's not possible. And probably we will put our kids, you know, in a position where they won't be able to, you know, carry themselves clearly in their communications.
Right. So Asif, now let's move into very important conversation, which is that English language is also a language that promotes, and it is a tool for the cross-cultural exchanges, right? So if you are an aspiring student, you want to go abroad, especially for international exposure, obviously English language is going to help you a lot. And all of these tests, SATs and GREs, and I mean, they're very English-centric. They're very focused on, absorbing the words from the English language. So do you believe that this elitism that is created around the English language, it needs to be deconstructed?
Yes, I mean, we can see, just look at these, all these top-notch so-called schools, okay, what they're offering only just like one aspect, and Taimur Saab is definitely going to agree. When we just meet some of them, not all of them, when we just meet some of them, we could see challenges that's at university level. For example, in their written aspect, I mean, they're just focusing on this only spoken aspect of language. Yes, they try to speak like American or British and all that, and perhaps this has got like kind of acceptance as well in their typical class. But if we just change it a bit, and we are going to accommodate more people, but now through this media it's possible, and all of us, all of them, they can just, problem is that it's awareness in their schools, okay. Hajra, what I have seen in their school as well, most of them, they are required, they usually plan to go abroad in different countries. So they are just told right from the very start that, okay, this is a particular test and you are going to prepare for this specific test. So they have got awareness, they prepare it accordingly, and most of them, they just make it to states or different parts. But when it comes to ordinary kids like us, who are coming from, let's say in my case, coming from government school, who know nothing about it, and we were just taught like ABC at school, like in our case, it's a different kind of story. But when I just got to the master level, I came to know a lot many different aspects, which I did add to my language, and it really helped me a lot just to cross the ladders of various areas, and to just get me connected to a lot many foreigners here in diplomatic enclave. Credit goes to, I would say, this language. I am not exactly from those elite schools and classes, but learning it, then improving, and still I am a learner, I'm just working on that. But it has just catapulted me to a lot many host of opportunities where I can just
and I think this brings us to a very interesting conversation, Taimur, because I was having this discussion with a very wonderful lady, and she talked about that how there is this, generally an obsession in our society with sending our kids to the A category school, where they're instilling the love of English language into their kids, and they're encouraging the kids to speak in English language, because when your kid is speaking in English language, it is a very sort of a prestigious moment for a child or for the school, and then you can proudly claim that, my child is going to this particular school, and she or he has learned English language. And like Asif mentioned, and I'm also coming from a school where we were not obsessed with speaking English, and I think alhamdulillah we are doing very fine in our jobs. So when we talk about deconstructing this elitism of the English language, what is the alternative that we need to give? Because obviously deconstructing means that you're constructing something other, right?
Right. See, when we talk about monolingualism, bilingualism and multilingualism, we speak one language at home that we call our mother tongue, and
That's
Pakistan is very rich and very diverse
Yes.
in mother tongues.
Yes.
Fine. The second one is Urdu, and the third one is most of the time English language. Now, to surpass mother tongue and national language and jump to English directly, this is something, and there are parents who say that the first language of my kid is English. Come on, how come it's English?
Yes,
Fine.
that's true.
I mean, it can't
You
be
are
English. It
disassociating
shouldn't
the
be
child
English.
from the roots, right?
Exactly.
And that's very unfair.
And you need to know that the benefits of being a multilingual kid are manifolds.
Yes.
If you teach your kid English in the first place, you deprive the kid from mother tongue, you deprive him or her from Urdu,
Right.
and you jump directly to English, then you are actually committing a lot of atrocities to your kid.
True.
Now, when we come to English language obsession for parents and for schools and for all these things, probably, you know, parents and teachers, institutions, organizations, language policymakers, they need to know that it's not just IQ that our kids need. They also need social quotient.
True.
They also need emotional quotient.
Oh, yes, that's
Fine.
important.
So, social quotient and emotional quotient living in this society, I'm referring back to the point that we started with, indigenous one. Fine. If we want to tell them how to carry themselves in this society, how to relate their emotions to their parents, to their relatives, to the country, etc., they need to have domestic emotional quotient, domestic social quotient, and obviously English is not carrying that EQ and SQ.
That's
Fine,
true.
you can improve upon the kid the IQ of your kid by instilling, you know, some English language into his mind, building up his schema and all that. But what about social and emotional quotient?
True.
Fine. So, I would say that obsession with English is not justified. Let them learn languages, you know, naturally. Yes,
Right.
if you want to them to learn English proficiently, okay, teach them, but do not deprive them of their mother tongue and their national language.
Right. And
There is another
sure.
aspect as well, which
Sure.
if I may
Sure.
add. Hajra, it's not only in Pakistan.
True.
Believe me, in diplomatic
Right.
enclave, I have seen,
Right.
I don't want to name those countries. Believe me, their first preference, and this is like sheer shock. They say that, okay, I mean, I really want them to speak like American. And last day I came
Oh,
across
yes.
one executive. He said, I'm willing to pay almost 5 lakh.
Oh my God.
And same for
To acquire the
pronunciation,
accent.
accent and all
Oh,
that.
yes.
And I mean, this is not only in our country.
Right.
It's, I think,
a global
problem
obsession.
obsession.
It's a global obsession, and I think we also need to contemplate upon a very important aspect, especially when we talk about grooming our children and teaching our children, which is the social media. And nowadays, you will find that kids are glued to the screens, they're watching cartoons, which are mostly coming in the English language, and they are naturally acquiring that English language. And you know that there is lots of conversation about our indigenous languages, how we need to protect them, for example, Punjabi, Pashto, Brahui, and all of these, you know, and Pakistan has a very rich diversity in those linguistics, right? So do you believe that our obsession, especially of this current generation with the English language, will, I mean, take us away, far away from our roots, and will it be very late for our society as us to reclaim back our, you know, those indigenous languages and the obsession of the English language? Because social media obviously is a, you know, big tool
You're
for
right in
learning,
saying that,
right? Yes. Asif.
Yes, I fully agree with that, and thank you very much for pointing out. And it's really, I mean, I appreciate from core of my heart, because when I just look at inside my family,
Yes.
and obsession of especially females, that okay,
I think
they've
that's a
got to only work
microcosm
on
of society.
one
Yeah,
the
every
language.
household is going through this.
I am not getting into any kind of conflict, but I really appreciate Pakhtun in this sense.
Oh yes.
Even at university level, wherever I have seen
Yes,
them,
yes.
believe me, Hajra, they always communicate.
In their
And
language,
this
Pashto.
gave me a lot of confidence that if I am from Punjab, why I'm scared? Because we always jump toward the other side as well, and we really feel very much comfortable communicating in that English language
We
or
do take pride
other
in
language,
that,
Urdu
yeah.
and other.
Yes.
But what the lesson which we get from them, that I mean, we should be very much proud of it.
That's
And it's my message through your program to all Punjabi families that please do not tell your kids all the time that it's bad. Let them speak in Punjabi language and feel proud about your
That's
language.
true, that's true. And that's a very important lesson, and especially for the families or for the people who take a lot of prestige and pride in English language. Obviously, it's a language that leads to your higher opportunities, but that does not mean that we have to eliminate or we do not have to work on our indigenous languages, and especially because they have such a rich cultural history, they have such a rich vibes to it. So for example, there's lots of poetry that has been churned in the indigenous languages, and we need to learn them because they are our roots, and you certainly feel a sense of belonging when you talk in your own language, and which we mentioned through the example of the Pashtun culture. So with that, we are binding up this segment. We are saying thank you so much to both of our guests for coming here, for having this wonderful cross-pollination of ideas regarding linguistics, regarding the English language, and the role of indigenous languages in our upbringing. After a short break, we will come back, and there's a very interesting discussion lined up. Don't go anywhere. Good morning. Welcome back, and before going on to the break, I alluded to the fact that we have a very interesting discussion lined up, and whenever I talk about interesting, especially the people who know me, I am often alluding towards the literary contribution or the books, because I am an avid book reader, and we are going to talk about and discuss in this particular segment about the book publishing and how the culture of book, it was a very vibrant culture in the Pakistan, but we see that it is vanishing, how to bring it back, and what is exactly the role of book publishers in hyping up or in making sure that this industry does not die. And I believe that it will never die, because there will always be book readers out there, no matter how much they shrink, but they will always be out there. So we are very glad that we have been joined by Syed Saqib Mumtaz Saab. He happens to be a book marketing expert. He is the CEO and the founder of A to Z Publisher. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thank you very much.
Right. So, sir, how did you venture into this particular field of book publishing? Because there's lots of conversation that book is nowadays dying because we have information coming from the social media. It's more quicker, it's shorter, and it has more potency to it as compared to books, because book reading is a long process, obviously. So, how did you come into this field?
Actually, as you said that you are an avid book reader, I am also a very fond of reading books, and we grew up reading books.
Yes.
If you remember that we, in our era, there used to be Ishtiaq Ahmed,
Yes.
and Imran series was very popular at that
True,
time,
true.
because we did not have anything else to do.
And there were magazines especially that
Yes.
were very encouraged at the household level to read them. Yes.
Over the period of time, things have changed a lot
Yes.
due to social media and this cable TV and etc. These have changed. They have occupied some space. Now the kids are finding difficult to manage their schoolwork, then social media, games, and then this. So I started as a hobbyist to, because I by qualification I am telecom engineer,
Oh, wonderful.
and I was interested in digital marketing since long. So I just kept on doing it as a hobby, and then I stumbled upon this field of book publishing and book marketing.
Right, right,
So that was by an accident. That is not by choice.
right.
So I wanted to be a digital marketer, but now I have specialized in book marketing and book publishing only.
Right, right.
So
Yes. So can you tell us about your own venture, A to Z Publishing, and if someone has an idea and if someone wants to approach you for publishing their work, for their book, what is the exactly method and what is exactly the filter process through which your a team works in order to make sure that there is a book published?
okay, regarding my team, we are following a very innovative concept.
Okay, wonderful.
We do not have any office. We are completely online.
Okay.
So that's how we are reducing our recurring expenditure on maintaining an organization. The second thing is that I train people because book marketing is very specialized subject. So if we want to render those services, I need to have some people, those who are freelancers. I train them, and then once the project comes, we employ them.
Right.
Regarding how A to Z publishing is, there is a large gap between the innovation on international market
Oh, yes.
and our authors. Unfortunately, our authors and publishing, we are still in 20th century, and the people have gone to 21st century. So wherever there are books being written, there is some audience, and we want to connect those audience with the author. That is the main aim of A to Z publishing.
Right. And so far, how has been the audience's response, especially to the book readers? And secondly, like you mentioned, there's such a tough competition out there. So there's a big names like Penguin Books, like the Oxford, and it's very difficult to compete with these big publishing house because they have a sort of monopoly out there. So how do you make sure that your content stands out in the market?
Okay, there is a difference nowadays. The way social media has progressed. Similarly, independent publishing, which we call self-publishing or independent publishing,
yes.
you can publish your book without any publisher
That's
on the digital platforms.
That's true.
The second advantage of publishing on digital marketplaces is that it is available across the globe.
That's true.
So every book which is published on Amazon, it is available in 19 marketplaces.
Right.
So anyone can download or buy that book, and that is not only restricted to e-book, that is paperback also, hardcover also. So your access is, your audience is now global world. So you have to innovate your marketing in such a way that you reach those audiences. So what we are trying to do is, most of the clients are not from Pakistan, they are abroad, and they take their books very seriously, and they spend a lot of money on marketing those books.
Right.
Because the difference is not of the content. We have very good content in Pakistan, but problem is how to reach the people who are willing to buy your book.
True,
So that is the main challenge which we are facing
Right.
in Pakistan market.
Right. So, Saket Saab, you mentioned and alluded to very important aspect in a more subtle tone, and which is very prevalent in the third world countries, which is the problem of piracy in the books, right? I mean, piracy does make the book available to a lot of people in a very cheaper rate, but obviously deprives the author of their very hard-earned money. And if someone wants to view their career as an author, obviously this is very discouraging because they're not getting the fair share of the money that they should get as someone who is a creator of that content, right? How to tackle the piracy problem, especially, and when it is so readily available in the form of the e-books, and there are lots of websites, especially on the social media, especially on the Google, that can make you easily available the books out there.
The first problem with Pakistan, which I have recognized, is that there is no such market where an author can earn something.
That's true.
That is the biggest problem, because most of the authors write their book and then they give it to their friends and families and libraries. So there is no such model where they can earn actually. So if you remember, there was a very prominent author, Paulo Coelho.
Oh yes.
He wrote Alchemist, and that book is still best-selling book, and that digital asset is selling. It is making money for Paulo Coelho even now after 35 years of publishing.
Right.
So first problem is that there is no market, and the space is occupied by these all social media, games and WhatsApp and TikTok. So if we are trying to do that, try to promote our own authors. If they start selling their books, they start earning something, so more people will join this, because this will become a business.
Right.
So the first problem is the market has to be created, or we have to reach the audience and we have to sell the books. That is the first challenge. The second thing which you talked about, that how we are going to do is, problem lies with not only marketing, also we have tried marketing the books of authors through Facebook also.
Right. I'm sorry for interjecting here, but I think book is one of the important aspect, which is also a tool for the bonding between a parent and between a child. So I remember when we were growing up, so there was a particular bedtime story times, and when we were sleeping, before going on to the bed, there were books, there were short books, stories which used to come there, and our parents used to, especially my mother, because my father was not usually available because he was on his job. So my mother would used to read those story books to us, and it was such a beautiful time memorizing it. And not only just that, but it also I think polished our intellectual faculties, and there was a particular culture of going to the libraries there and making sure that we go for the books, we read the books. And as someone who has grown up in a family, so I was very habitual of going to the libraries, of having the Enid Blyton books, because any children library is, I think, very empty without the books of the Enid Blyton. So sir, if someone wants to thrive as an author or as a publisher, so what are the steps that you would recommend?
As I mentioned earlier, that there is no problem with the content which we are producing, our authors are producing. The issue is we have to match the international market's demand. We have to format the book accordingly. Then we have to build a good profile on online. I am talking about online, because if you are successful offline, it does not mean that you will also become successful online, because it is a whole different ball game. So, if you want to become a successful author, first step is you have to spend a lot of money to market your book, because that is your bread and butter, and that you have spent a lot of time in creating that book. But once it comes to marketing, people start thinking, okay, it will sell automatically. Even The Alchemist did not sell automatically. It took 6 years to get published from Brazil to America.
Right.
So, if they do not treat their own asset as a digital asset, and they are not willing to spend, how they are going to sell the book in the highly competitive market.
True, true.
And the last point which you were discussing about piracy, we have to also see our own laws in that regard. Because in America, if you write a book, you are considered master of your trade, and also there is a lot of protection, intellectual property protection.
Yes.
So, that has to change, but it will change. Maybe I am the first one who is talking about this thing, but soon people will start realizing.
Right, and also you talked about the international pressures, especially to compete in an international market, and I do believe that Pakistani authors or the people coming from the third world countries, they're generating a narrative, especially in the fiction, in the storytelling, that complies to the Western audience's perception. And in the way, I think the indigenous voices of Pakistan or Pakistani stories, they are buried in this process. So, for example, if you look at Mohsin Hamid or Kamala Shamsi or all of these authors, so you will find that a very common theme around these books will be, polarization of a society, fragmentation, radicalism, extremism, and all of these things. And I believe that Pakistan is much more than that. I mean, there is so much cultural rich history out there. If you talk about Dastan Goi, if you talk about lots of other very rich traditions, and they are buried. Why? Because Western audiences want to hear something about their Pakistan, which they have already a built-in audiences, right? A built-in perception. How to, generate a more powerful narratives that are truly reflective of our country and not just, comply to Western biases.
Okay, one thing I am doing research, and inshallah maybe I would be able to publish that book.
Right.
I am collecting romantic folk stories from Pakistan and from all over the world.
Wonderful.
So, they are very much interested in Oriental romantic stories.
Yes.
And even if you go and analyze the market, 90% market still is fiction.
Right, true.
And the most amazing thing about the technology is there is a very good book by Holly Jackson, that is Good Girl's Guide to Murder. She lives in England, and she has written the book about an American town.
Okay.
And I was listening to her interview, and she said that I use Google Maps and Google Street Views to see. So, she explored the whole town, and she said that I knew each and everything about the town. And if you relate that book with the actual that town, so you will see that it is highly accurate. So, what I would like to say is that the technology is there. It is we have to grab that opportunity. Secondly, if you go by that statistics, Indian people read most of the books. They spend about I think 1,000 hours in a year to read the books.
But they are a much bigger country than us, right?
Yes, they are bigger country. Big, yes, population, and they also have got these digital platforms. We do not have any digital platform to publish the book over here. But we are trying to help. Many authors, they have done a lot of research, but they have published their book with traditional publishers. And they are making only living by royalties. So, if you self-publish, you are in control of your book and royalties. That is the way to go about this. Regarding Pakistan, yes, there are a lot of misconceptions, but this can be countered by developing good base for literary circles and authors. If they publish their book, there are many authors who are not living in Western world, but they have become bestsellers. So, why can't our authors become?
True. And also lastly, can you ruminate over some of the basics of the book publishing and the procedures if someone wants to, and obviously you mentioned about self-publishing, but if someone wants to approach a book publisher particularly, so it can, or that person can have a wider audiences, how can that person do that?
Okay, the traditional publishing is predominant, but problem with traditional publishing is that author does not get a lot of royalties from them.
Yes, true.
The second problem is initially prior to probably 20 years back, there was a network available to traditional publisher that they could put your book into bookshelves.
Yes.
Now, I have discussed with many authors who are not living in Pakistan. They say that even our traditional authors are saying that you have to do some heavy lifting.
Right.
So, if I have to do heavy lifting with traditional publishers, so why I can't publish my book at my own?
True.
So, the self-publishing is going to be, and still I can tell you that New York Times does not recognize that self-published authors are authors.
Oh,
they do not have any best-selling list, but time is changing. Probably 10 years back, there was no concept of YouTube channels. Now, everywhere there you see everyone has a YouTube channel.
True, true.
So, similarly, there are steps involved, but traditional publishing is very slow. You cannot publish, and the control is with publisher.
True.
They can change your book, they can say, okay, we do not like, and they even reject your book.
Right.
J.K. Rowling's book were rejected, I think, by 14 publishing houses.
True.
So, self-publishing, if you have a book in Word format, I am talking about English books.
Right.
If you have in Word format and you have a cover design, you can publish it from your home.
That's true.
And they are not charging any money once you are publishing. But yes, once you start marketing, you want to sell, then they will charge royalty from there.
Right, and that's a very interesting process, because how are you going to earn money? This model is certainly evolving, and it is being looked after, and especially with the advent of the social media, with the advent of Twitter, because a lot of people who want to publish their book, if their content of their threads go viral on the Twitter, a lot of people, a lot of book publishing approach them because of the popularity of the content, because of the virality, the element of the virality in that thread, and it can get published and it can be approached, and that is how social media is giving voice to a lot of voiceless people with whom this platform was not available before the advent of the social media, and we will certainly see the evolution of it, how it is going to filter out the content. But with that, we will wrap up this segment and say thank you to our guest for coming here. Thank you so much, sir, and for having this wonderful conversation. And until next time, it's a goodbye, Allah Hafiz, and good morning.